This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
And welcome to The Drive. The sun is shining here in Pittsburgh. There's still a lot of snow on the ground, but there's plenty of sun out there.
Starting to melt a little bit.
Steelers are practicing down at Acrisure Stadium again today as they prepare for their Sunday or Saturday night matchup. Why would I say Sunday? They never play on Sundays.
Anymore,
Saturday night matchup against the Baltimore Ravens. And news out of Baltimore today, John Harbaugh declaring that Zay Flowers will not play in this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I think it's huge. It's something we suspected all week, obviously.
But until he said it, you just didn't know.
Yeah, I thought he might hold out hope, game time decision, one of those kind of nonsense. But he hasn't practiced. Didn't look good when it happened. And I think there's a lot of ramifications for them.
Huge.
I mean, he's their quick game guy. He's their best wideout. And just the way the Steelers' secondary is constructed, I think it fits well with their pass catchers now.
Yeah, I think everybody's forgetting that for the second game in Baltimore this year, you didn't have Deshaun Elliott, you didn't have Dante Jackson, and Joey Porter Jr. got hurt in the middle of that game.
Right. They were on fumes in the secondary, to say the least. Right.
So it has a trickle-down effect the whole way across this. And if you look back at that first game, Lamar Jackson completed 48.5% of his passes, 6.3 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, a passer rating of 66.1, which has been what he has done against the Steelers over the course of his career. The outlier was the next meeting when he completed 65.2% of his passes, averaged 9 yards per pass attempt, had 3 touchdowns, and posted a 115.4 passer rating against a secondary that was missing basically for 2.5 starters, basically the entire game.
Yeah. And honestly, by Lamar's standards this year, that second game wasn't him shredding.
He didn't blow it off.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't his best game of the year or anything like that, not even close. And we've talked about this week, and I think it's really what works out well, considering Bateman's a good player. I mean, I really liked him coming out of Minnesota. He's had some injuries. Instead of picking up their fifth-year option, they extended him a year. They liked him. They didn't want him getting away. And they've used him as a deep threat more than I expected this year. Because Flowers is a quick hitter. And yeah. I mean, they usually don't have a third receiver on the field. So kind of by default, he's kind of your go guy. But he has some physicality to him. But I think Porter matches up really, really well on him. Just stylistically, talents, all those type of things. And then you mentioned Elliott not being around the first go-round. Minka was asked to do a lot of different stuff during that stretch, and he's very capable. But Elliott is really good against the run, for one thing. I mean, I think we know that. Yeah. He's a glue guy. He's a communicator, which has been a problem the last month or so. But I like my chances with Elliott and Minka against Likely and Andrews in any way, shape, or form, however that works out. And then that leaves you a lot of – I'm not saying there'll never be safeties over the top or you're going to be playing cover zero all day, but I bet they're aggressive with their coverages, and that allows you to put a lot of people near the box.
Yeah, allows you to put more in the box to dedicated to stopping the run.
Yeah.
I looked it up today, Matt. The wide receivers on Baltimore's team currently right now who are not named Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, 27 catches this year.
That doesn't surprise me.
27 catches.
Yeah, and other than Aguilar, they've never really had career success either.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a bunch of unknowns. And
even Aguilar's career success is...
I mean, he was a former first-round pick, but he hasn't been good.
It's a lot of this. Dropping the ball.
Yeah. I don't think
in Philadelphia.
I don't think you love him playing a ton.
No.
I assume he'll be there too, though.
Could be Tylan Wallace.
Could be. Maybe they just have a rotation going or different packages or whatever, but I don't think you're going to see 3 of them on the field very much.
Not very much.
I wouldn't. I mean, you're leaving a good player in Likely or Ricard or Kohler or whoever off the field if that's your approach.
Yeah, it certainly shrinks what Baltimore can do. Not that they play a lot of 11 personnel to begin with, but
they can throw it, and right now that limits them.
And the guys are still going to put on the field. It's not like there's not some good players there,
right?
But they don't have that speed element with
the playmaker.
They have the playmaking, I should say. They have the speed element, but do you trust the speed element as much as you do with Zay Flowers?
Right. I mean, he's going to the Pro Bowl this year. He's an ascending player. Teams have been attacking the Steelers by getting it out quick. I would think he'd be your top target for that. quick hitters near the line of scrimmage, get open immediately, scheme them up through motion, whatever. Andrews and Likely are good players too. But I think the Steelers safeties can do fair enough against them.
And remember, Andrews in his first 10 games against the Steelers, in his first 10 games.
Yeah.
The 11th one was the last one that they played. Had 0 touchdown catches against the Steelers.
Yeah.
None. 0. Zilch. Nada. Now, he did have a touchdown catch in the second meeting when the Steelers were missing 3 starters in the second meeting.
Yeah.
It's just a huge – it makes them so much easier to defend.
Yeah. I think it just – the way that the Steelers are set up and the way that the Ravens are set up, that'd be one of the guys you'd want to pluck out of their lineup, maybe ahead of Andrews, maybe ahead of any of the offensive linemen.
Pretty much ahead of anybody but Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson.
I think so, just because they're so weak there, which is why they traded for Deontay Johnson. That didn't work out, but they recognized we don't have a lot of man beaters. We don't have a lot of quick hitter type guys.
Yeah. The other thing people forget about that first game against the Ravens was no George Pickens for the Steelers.
Right.
So they were –
Porter and Pickens are really hard to replace.
Yeah, as you're seeing here, we heard this all season long with the Steelers. I can't believe they didn't go get a second wide receiver. They needed a second wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Baltimore's in the same boat.
Yeah.
Now, Bateman is –
You'd love that Bateman.
Coming into this season,
right.
You didn't know what Bateman was.
No, right.
He had never shown anything like this.
No, it's definitely his best year.
But even at that, he has 45 catches this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like he's,
I think he had 3 or 4 last week, and then he had 1 and 1 the 2 weeks before that.
Yeah.
He's not a consistent
he's been a secondary
target earner over and over and over. Right. And frankly, I think Porter's the better player.
Yeah.
I know the Steelers secondary is not the strength of the team, but boy, would I challenge them this week. We're not even putting safeties over the top to help you guys. The 3 of you 2 safeties, and even Jackson versus Aguilar. The 4 of you are going to take their 4 top receivers, and we'll help you some, but there's going to be times we're not. That's the way it's going to go.
And I would look at this.
It allows you to blitz more. That allows you to,
and say, look, if we're not going to let Bateman beat us,
mm-hmm.
we're not going to let the 2 tight ends beat us. We're going to try not to let the quarterback and the running back beat us. If one of those if Tylan Wallace beats you or Nelson Aguilar beats you, it's just not your day.
Yeah, so be it. Right. Yeah. Again, Kohler doesn't even touch the ball. Ricard doesn't even touch the ball. They're blockers. They're guards in motion and chip guys.
Well, that's the other thing here, Matt. So you take those 70-plus catches out of the lineup, 1,000-plus yards out of the lineup. They only play. They largely play in 22 or 20 21 personnel. There's 2 tight ends, a fullback, and a running back on the field a lot.
Yeah.
So now you're taking that outside weapon away from that. The guy that can actually, when you're playing in that formation or with that grouping, who actually can scare the bejesus out of a defense, because if you miss a tackle on Zay Flowers and he's shifty, he can
Space
go.
Player,
He can make a big play against you. We've kind of taken some of that away. Bateman's not a run after the catch guy.
No, not so much. No, he's a move the chains. Can get over the top, but he's not a super burner either. Despite his long ones.
It's the physicality down the field. Or a lot of times with him, it's because he's wide open.
He gets a lot of singles, right. Play action and take a shot to him. And again, he's evolving, but he's not close to a 1.
Yeah.
And he's a very different type of player than Flowers.
So, again, it makes them much easier to defend in this game, and you're at full strength.
Right. I do think the health stuff is certainly in the Steelers' favor, especially on that side of the ball, too. Now, that doesn't mean you can get Henry on the ground or Lamar on the ground, or if you blitz Lamar, and I hope they do, because he's a heavily blitzed player, and he handles it well. He handles everything well now. But I want to get hits on him. I want him to force the ball out of his hands.
Well, I'm not as worried about dropping guys. Here's what I think in the second meeting, because they were down so many players in the secondary. You got James Pierre out there. You had Corey Trice out there. Cam Sutton's out there a lot. That
the Suttons and Beanies probably won't play hardly at all.
Probably not much at all in this game. And I think because you were kind of, you just didn't have your guys back there, you're more concerned about Lamar beating you over the top, at least early in the game, than you are maybe stopping Derrick Henry. Yeah.
And again, I'm sure burn the boats. They're going to. We don't need to play a conservative cover 3 shell over and over, because what do we got to lose? We're not playing to live another day. We're on the road. We're a dog. We got some serious playmakers in the run game and a really good quarterback. Let's do everything we can to make life difficult on him.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have a go-to guy.
Doesn't have as much as Andrews has been the whoopee over the years. Flowers has kind of been. It's
really important. Yeah.
He's the first receiver in their history that they have drafted who made a Pro Bowl.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, like all their good ones have been like Bolden, Steve Smith, Mason that they've recycled. And I'm not sure any of them were great. I mean, they're not exactly known as a throw it all over the place, franchise, but that is pretty crazy. I mean, it's a good organization. Only have one drafted receiver go to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
Pro Bowls aren't that hard to come by.
No, they're not. Right. Yeah, I mean, again, 3 receivers in the AFC North made it this year, which is what it is. But I just think that's a massive blow to the Ravens. Now, I'm sure they've been, they've prepared all week long, like, hey, we're probably not going to have him, but you hold out hope until the last minute, and
Do we know any Justice Hill stuff? Do we think he plays?
He's going to be back. Yeah.
I assume so. Now, this sounds crazy, but he's a playmaker. Mitchell's a playmaker, but that means you take Henry off the field.
Right.
Like, do they want to get some easy completions to backs? I mean, I'm trying to think how they would think. Without Flowers, I'm definitely not going to trot out a third receiver.
No.
Who are my other pass catchers? Of course, I'm going to try to feature Likely and Andrews. And if I'm in their shoes, I might be like, okay, those Steeler safeties are pretty good, but our tight ends are equally good. We're going to go toe-to-toe with those guys, and we hope we win that matchup. And they might,
Here's the thing, though. You're starting to throw the ball around Minkah. And that's the one thing that did go well for the Steelers the last time is that Minkah picked one off against, because Lamar, as good of a passer as he is, and I think he's gotten so much better at this, he still will overthrow a receiver every once in a while.
Sure. And he's a shorter guy, too. I keep going back to tips and things like that, too. I mean, I think you can get Cam does every game. I mean, I feel like you can get your hands on the ball, whether it's D linemen or PBUs on the back end, at some point in this game.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised. I just looked before we started the show, and, of course, the news here on Flowers has been out now for a couple of hours. And I wanted to see if that had moved the line at all. And it really hasn't.
I assumed Vegas assumed he was going to be out.
Which is surprising to me because the first meeting, the Steelers didn't have Pickens, and they were missing, again, some guys in the secondary and Ogunjobi as well. And that one was 7 points. You're telling me
adding Ogunjobi to the mix is not nothing either.
No, right.
Yeah.
So what you're telling me, or what Vegas is saying from that line to this one, is that if Zay Flowers were playing, the Ravens would be 11 or 12-point favorites?
I don't exactly know how that works. I mean, I just know that they want equal people betting on both sides.
He's as important to their offense as Pickens is to the Steelers' offense.
I'd say close. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I just think that the general public, Joe Blow from Omaha or Seattle or whatever, just says, boy, the Steelers are sliding and the Ravens are hot,
We've been talking about this Flowers thing all week. I don't know that I've heard or seen a lot of other analysis
the same thing
about this.
I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I go to a bunch of different sites every day, and I don't think people realize, or at least yet, the ramifications of what happens with him being out.
Again, the rest of their receivers, all of them, had 27 catches. Not named Bateman or Flowers. Like they barely play.
And it's so much different than like the Bengals, where it'd be like Higgins or Chase being out to a degree, just because.
But at least they've got Yosivas, who's a decent player.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the Steelers being one really strong man corner, where Bateman might be an issue for them if Flowers was out there.
Right.
Or I don't think Porter would probably even line up on Flowers. Maybe he'd still be on Bateman.
He did the first time in the first game. They put Porter on Bateman.
Yeah.
He matched up man-to-man on
Much
Bateman.
more his style.
Bateman had 2 catches in the game for like 30 yards.
It's kind of like Higgins versus Chase.
Yeah.
Then
they worked the other thing, with, okay, we're just going to double Flowers here. And Flowers really didn't hurt them much in that game.
But if they take the same approach without doubling him, double the new guy, and then you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah. So, again, I think it has a massive trickle-down effect in this game. And I don't know that it's being talked about enough.
No, I 100% agree. And I do expect the Steelers to have a lot of big people on the field. I mean, you're going to have Roberts, you're going to have Benton, you're going to have your base 3-4. Wouldn't shock me if you saw a third outside linebacker out there at times.
You know, all three inside backers. Just
yeah.
You know, whatever you're going to do there. Again, if they're going to come out with two tight ends, a fullback, and a running back, well, that's 4 eligibles right there. They've only got one receiver on the field.
Yeah,
so you're playing with one cornerback a lot of times.
I would say that would play the Steelers' strengths. Honestly,
yeah,
I'd be very fine with that. Like, I'm sure people do not count Ricard the same as they count Mitchell or Hill. You can't. I mean, if he catches,
catch all season,
he doesn't touch the ball. You know, right? He's a guard.
Kohler barely touches the ball.
Yeah,
I mean, again, if these are the guys that beat you, so be it.
I mean, they may catch a touch. I mean, Kohler might catch a short touchdown or a first down, or Ricard picks up a 4th and 1. You know,
but they're not foundational.
They're not volume
pieces of the passing game.
No, they're not going to feature those guys at all.
It's like, you know, throwing the ball to Michael Pruitt or something. You know, that's okay.
Yeah,
every once in a while,
Pruitt's a better weapon than those two.
Yeah,
I mean, right.
But by and large, I mean,
no, those aren't NFL playmakers. They're out there to create matchup or create blocking angles, be physical, on the move linemen.
And you dug up a great stat on those two players in particular.
It's crazy. I mean,
when they're on the field.
Yeah.
When Kohler and Ricard are on the field together, the Ravens run the ball 88% of the time.
Was it 88? Yeah. That goes back to this year and last year combined.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of numbers out there of Kohler's on the field, their run percentage is like well over 60. If Ricard's on the field, it's well over 60. Now, that's not totally shocking, and sometimes they're up by 20 late in the game, and they bring out the horses and hammer you.
But when they're both on the field,
they're running the ball.
They're running the ball. They might as well have a sign back behind Lamar that goes, "We're running the football here."
Now, stopping it's a different story.
Right.
You know, it can be Lamar getting the ball, who's a much different ball carrier than Henry. And those guys are good blockers, too. They can dig out Watt or Highsmith or even a defensive lineman. Right. I mean, they're 300-pound, Ricard. I mean, they can take on the land and Roberts in the hole. There aren't many people that can do that type of thing. And we did a show with Rob King today, too, and he mentioned, you love to get penetration on Henry. I mean, you don't want him to get his feet started.
Yeah.
But they know that, too. So they run a lot of traps. They let you come upfield, and they wham you from the side. They know what you're trying to do, too. Their running game is very diverse.
Yeah, absolutely. But, again, I think that's just a massive piece of news today that comes out. Again, the Steelers relatively healthy for this one. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got a special guest coming on.
Yeah.
Marcus Mosher from the 33rd team also does some work with Matt on
we recorded a podcast yesterday. Yeah.
But he's going to join us. He made his NFL picks for the playoff games this week.
He pretty much writes like an article a day, I've noticed, for 33rd team. He's a busy guy.
We've talked about his stuff on here before, but he's going to join us on the show here in the next segment. We're going to chat with him about this game, get a little national perspective on this particular matchup right after this. And welcome back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, and we're joined on the Justin Miller hotline by Marcus Mosher from the 33rd team. I know you do a lot of other stuff as well.
He's a busy guy.
Including a podcast with Matt here as well, Marcus, on the on what is it, Locked On Network,
Locked On Dynasty every Wednesday.
Locked
I join
On Dynasty,
these guys.
But we appreciate you dropping in here on the drive and sharing your expertise here, Marcus, because we wanted to get kind of a national perspective on this particular game. And I know you're a fellow 814 guy like myself up in Erie.
Yes.
First of all, have you dug out from all the snow yet, or did you guys not get all the snow in Erie?
We got about 16 inches over the last 2 days.
That's a dusting in Erie.
Yeah, it's just a regular Thursday for us. It's no big deal.
Yikes.
But, Marcus, you released your picks, as you do every week, on the 33rd team predictions for the upcoming playoff games, and you do this every week on the 33rd team. We talk about
they
stuff
keep you
on
busy,
time.
too, huh?
Yeah, you do a lot of stuff on there.
Oh, yeah.
So your pick on the Steelers-Ravens game, let us give our listeners an idea of what you picked and why you picked that particular outcome. I'll let you explain it.
First of all, I feel like I'm the only person that's picking Pittsburgh or even giving Pittsburgh a chance in this game. And I don't quite understand why. Listen, I know Pittsburgh has lost the last 4 games. I know the Ravens have played really well over the last 4 games. But these two teams always play really close games. And when you get into the playoffs and it's a divisional matchup, I just would hate to lay 9.5, 10 points on a team that's without their number one receiver. And I want to go back to the previous game because I think a lot of people are remembering that second game differently. The Steelers did not have Dante Jackson. They lost Joey Porter Jr. early in that game. The Steelers rely so much on their corners to be able to cover one-on-one. So when you're without your top two guys, it makes a big difference. They'll have both of those guys this week. And Zay Flowers is going to be out in this one. We should mention George Pickens also didn't play in that second matchup. It just feels like everything is aligning for the Steelers to make this game way more competitive than anybody else that expects.
Yeah, Marcus, I love that you recognize that there was a lot of circumstances for that game. And the Steelers were also in the midst, as were the Ravens, 3 games in 11 days, a brutal stretch. They were pretty banged up, and they were kind of getting kicked while they were down. But they're in a lot different spot right now. As mentioned, you and I do a dynasty show, and you're on top of all these skill position players. What do you think they're missing in Zay Flowers? What's your quick profile of him?
I mean, somebody that can get open quickly. They just don't have anybody else on the roster that can win one-on-one, create quick separation, and then make plays after the catch. Rashad Bateman's had a really good year. This is the best he's played all year, but he's not a number one receiver. He's a really good complementary player. And if I'm looking at this from a Baltimore perspective, how do they create big chunk plays in the passing game without Zay Flowers? It's going to be really hard. And I think what Mike Tomlin is going to do is continue to blitz Lamar Jackson at an absurd rate. He does it more than any other defensive coordinator in the league, and dare Lamar, who has been shaky in the playoffs, and Lamar's actually talked about this. He gets a little too amped up for these games. Try to complete passes down the field to Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, with Pittsburgh's healthy corners back on the field.
Yeah,
they blitz him on early downs a lot too. Yeah,
lots of run blitzes, right? To try to force them out of first and second down runs.
Yeah, and they even in the win in Baltimore, Lamar he had 3 touchdowns and an interception, but he only had like 207 passing yards, and I think he had 22 rushing yards in that game. It wasn't a Lamar game. So in the back of his mind, it's not only the playoff stuff that he has to deal with, but he hasn't played well in his career against the Steelers either.
No, he hasn't, and I do wonder if John Harbaugh and Todd Monken just don't go back to a more run-heavy offense. And I think Pittsburgh knows that, right? They know they have to stop Derrick Henry. But that might be the best strategy for Baltimore, is to use more 2 tight end sets, get Isaiah Likely in the field, and just try to keep this game close until Lamar settles down a little bit. There's been plenty of quarterbacks over NFL history that just take a couple quarters to get going. They need to get hit. They need to have things kind of slow down for them. I think Lamar is one of those quarterbacks. I wouldn't be surprised if we have like a 7-6 first half between Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
Which is right up the Steelers' alley for a game like this.
Exactly.
It'll probably be some sort of weather, of course. The Steelers are going to be aggressive physically, with nothing to lose at this point. And you mentioned Likely. We kind of assume at this point they're a very light, 11 personnel offense anyway. I'd be shocked if we see a third receiver on the field hardly at all. I mean, that's going to be Likely and Andrews. But those guys aren't your chippers against Watt. That's going to be Charlie Kohler, which isn't a threat.
Yeah, and actually Charlie Kohler's out in this game. He got hurt last week.
Okay.
So it's probably going to be Patrick Ricard. Like, we might see some 22 personnel in this game. And honestly, that might be the best way to attack Pittsburgh anyways, is try to load up, make Pittsburgh's defensive line have to try to get off blocks and make tackles. I will say, I think with Pittsburgh having such a long losing streak in the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if this is finally the playoff game where Mike Tomlin unleashes a little bit. I don't think he can play a conservative game plan and necessarily win this. This is the healthiest he's been in the playoffs in the last several years. Remember, TJ Watt didn't play last year.
Right. Every year it's been somebody else.
They're pretty much healthy from the team they had starting in October. I just wouldn't be surprised if this is the game that Tomlin is a little bit more aggressive than what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I mean, you either have the weapons and everything, or you don't, and it is interesting to me, at least. I think back, and I brought this up earlier in the week. I think back to the 2014 playoff game the Steelers played against the Ravens, where they had to win a division in the final week of the season against the Bengals, and so they played it to win it. Le'Veon Bell gets hurt, and so they go into the game the following week against the Ravens, who were the wild card team. Ravens are healthy. The Steelers are missing Le'Veon Bell, who's their best offensive weapon, and lo and behold, the Ravens win that game. There's some correlation here between that and what's going on with Flowers.
And the other thing I want to point out about this game is it feels like the longer that Pittsburgh stays in it, the better their chances are of winning, because I don't know about you guys, but whenever I watch Justin Tucker now, I just expect him to miss, right?
Yeah.
And I have the complete opposite feeling with Chris Boswell. Like, hey, get him inside the 42-yard line, and that kick is going to be good. It doesn't matter if it's raining or snowing or windy. He is so clutch. And I think that's going to have to factor into how the Ravens play this. I don't think they want to play a game where they have to rely on their defense to make a stop or Justin Tucker to make a 50-yard field goal. So, again, I think if Pittsburgh can keep this game close going into the fourth quarter, they're going to have a great chance of stealing it.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, your prediction in the game score was Steelers 20, Ravens 19. So you're expecting that kind of game.
It's probably the only way Pittsburgh can win, right? But the good news for the Steelers,
it's in the 30s. I don't love their chances, right?
No. Pittsburgh excels at playing 20-19 games. Like, Mike Tomlin loves it, and I do think that Baltimore has a tendency, especially in the first playoff game, to be a little tight. And the longer that they stay tight and the fewer big plays they create down the field, I just think it's going to get more anxious for them as the game goes on.
I'm glad you brought up the special team / kicker advantage, but Steelers have been really strong on special teams all year. And Harbaugh over his career is always at the top of the league of special teams, and that's changed drastically lately. But the other things on the margins that favor the Steelers are Baltimore is the second heaviest penalized team in the entire league. Steelers are kind of middle of the road to below or above average. And then turnovers. I mean, despite not being great in turnover differential during this losing streak, they're still second overall to the Bills, and where the Ravens are kind of middle of the road. So bounces and winning in the margins, I think, really favors Pittsburgh.
And we should mention in that second matchup, I believe there were 4 fumbles in that game, and Baltimore recovered them all. Now,
no fumble luck lately at all. Yeah,
right. And it's really hard to predict that. But if 1 or 2 of those go your way, you never know. And again, Baltimore is a very talented team, but they're sloppy. They're sloppy on offense with penalties. I think they had 8 pre-snap penalties against Pittsburgh in that first game. We saw the fumble by Derrick Henry. They are not a super clean team, and that's why they can lose some of these games to far lesser teams. I just don't trust Baltimore in the playoffs yet to not step on their toes in these kind of games.
And Marcus, looking at some of the other games here this weekend, obviously everybody's going to be keyed in on all these games, particularly in our area here in the AFC games. It's an AFC Saturday, and the Chargers are at the Houston Texans. The Chargers favored in that game. Who do you like in that one?
Oh, I love the Chargers this week. I've been surprised that line was only 2.5 or 3 when it first came out. Chargers are playing really well. They've scored at least 34 points in their last 3 games. It feels like that offense, it's taken a bit, but the offense is finally starting to click. Meanwhile, Houston's defense is really good. That offense is a train wreck right now. I just don't see how C.J. Stroud, without Tank Dell, without Stephon Diggs, and with a pretty bad offensive line, is able to score more than 17, 20 points.
That's why they went and got Deontay Johnson.
Problem solved.
Do you think we'll see Deontay this week? Because I have my doubts, right?
Who knows?
No way you can put him out there.
Do you think the Texans are the weakest team in the playoffs?
Yeah, probably. That's
why their O-line's probably the weakest unit.
Yeah, I kind of thought last week it would have been better if Pittsburgh ended up playing Houston in round 1.
Sure.
Rather than even hosting Baltimore as the 3 seed. I would expect Houston to get bounced pretty quickly. This is just not a good matchup for them at all.
How about Denver, Buffalo?
I would be nervous if I'm a Buffalo fan.
Yeah.
You worked so hard for this number 2 seed, and what's your reward? Is playing Sean Payton in one of the best defenses in the NFL. Buffalo's defense has been kind of an issue in December. They gave up 44 points to the Rams, 42 to the Lions, I believe. I don't love rookie quarterbacks playing on the road in round one, but I'm sure Sean Payton's going to come up with a really good game plan to try to nickel and dime Buffalo's defense, which has worked a lot this season. I think Buffalo will win this game, but man, I do not feel confident about it at all. I think that spread of 9, I think it's 8.5, 9 is way too high.
I totally agree. I think Denver's defense keeps that very, very interesting down to the end. You mentioned rookie quarterbacks. You know, we've talked fantasy, you and I, a ton over the year here. I think there's going to be a ton of points in Washington, Tampa. I mean, I know it's a rookie quarterback, but, you know, for those people doing like postseason fantasy, I want to get everyone I can in that game.
Yeah, Matt, I was looking at the over-under on that game, and it was 50. I was like, is that just the first half line or is that the overall line? Because I don't see how either of these defenses are going to get stops in this game. I know. Tampa Bay's defense was getting shredded by Spencer Rattler last week in a must-win game. Meanwhile, Washington, who they were trying to beat Dallas, Trey Lance was moving the ball up and down the field. So I expect that to be a 34-31 type of game. But I think I'm going to lean Tampa Bay just because they have a lot of veterans who have been in big games. I think Baker Mayfield is playing, obviously, the best football of his career. But honestly, that's probably the game I'm most excited to watch this week. It should be a ton of fun.
How about Green Bay, Philadelphia? I know there's still some.
We're assuming Hurts is going to play.
We don't know
right?
what's up with Hurts here. He hasn't been cleared yet. But assuming he does play, do you think they handle the Packers? Or is this a situation where maybe he's coming back, he's a little rusty after a few weeks?
Last year Green Bay was the 7th seed, and they went and played an NFC East team in round one. And they beat them. I'm not going to mention what team that is because I happen to be a fan of that team out in Dallas. But no, I
do have a Cowboys question for you before you leave too.
Thanks, Matt. I don't think this is a good matchup for Green Bay. I think, especially without Christian Watson, I just don't know how they're going to create plays vertically against Vic Fangio's defense. I would expect Philadelphia to win this game by at least a touchdown.
Me too. I think Philly might be the best team in the league right now, to be honest with you. So where are you on Sam Darnold? I mean, that's obviously our last game. Did we see a chink in the armor? Was it a bad day? Or is the dam about to break on Sam Darnold?
I'm not all that concerned. I thought Aaron Glenn's defense did they did a great job of getting pressure. The red zone defense was awesome. Sam Darnold has played too well this year to get overly concerned about a road game against the number one team, maybe in the NFL. I think Sam's going to be fine. I think they're going to put up a bunch of points against the Rams this week.
It should be interesting because as it works out, the way the league scheduled this, all the AFC games first, and then you get the NFC playoffs. I don't know if they planned it that way or why they would have done it that way, but that's what we get.
Yeah, I think Fox just didn't want to give up the Packers-Eagles game, which I understand. And then I can't believe Sunday Night Football chose Commanders and Buccaneers, but I get it. Those are two of the best offenses in the league, so it should be fun.
Yeah. Our Steelers haven't played on a normal Sunday in about an eternity. I mean, they're always on Christmas or 3 days and 11 days or Saturday or Saturday night. Yes.
Matt, I think this is 5 straight games they played not on a Sunday, which is pretty incredible.
It's the longest streak that they've gone without playing a Sunday game since their first year in 1933.
It's nuts.
And they had the Pennsylvania Blue laws to deal with. That's where we're at with this whole thing. But I knew whether it was going to be the Ravens coming to Pittsburgh or the Steelers going to Baltimore, whichever way that worked out, that game was going to be Saturday night because it's must-see TV.
Oh, it'll get some ratings,
Yeah. Or if they would have went and played Houston in round one, that game was going to be.
That would have been a 4 o'clock game on Saturday,
yeah. I think Houston's played that Saturday afternoon game about 25 straight years, so yeah. Right.
So, Marcus, we mentioned it. I mean, you host Lock on Cowboys, too, and to me, that's probably the only coaching change that still could happen. Do you think they're out of the woods? Are they bringing McCarthy back, or what's your take on that, or is it done?
I think McCarthy and Jerry Jones would like a deal to get done.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's some things that are holding it up. For example, who's going to be the defensive coordinator? Mike Zimmer, the Cowboys really like him. They want him back. He might retire. So that's part of the issue. They don't want to bring McCarthy back without knowing who the defensive coordinator is. And also, McCarthy wants a 5-year deal. He wants some security and not just being another lame duck coach. Jerry Jones wants him to come back on a 1-year deal to prove that he can right the wrongs of the season. I think they're going to come to a compromise, but if they don't, watch out for Kellen Moore to potentially come in and take his job.
What would you do?
I would probably move on to try to get one of these younger head coaches,
Okay.
maybe Liam Cohen from Tampa Bay. I don't think Ben Johnson wants any of this mess here in Dallas, but I think it's time to give some new energy to the building.
Okay. Well, Marcus, we appreciate your time here. We'll let you get back. I know it's a busy time of the year, and you've got probably 17 more articles to write for the 33rd team. But our guest has been Marcus Mosher of the 33rd team, and, of course, the Locked On Network. You can check out Marcus's work on the 33rd team, and that's the spelled out 33rd, the number 33rd, and then team. Great stuff on there. Again, we reference that website all the time on this show, and we appreciate Marcus sharing some time with us. And we'll see if he's right after this weekend.
Brings up some good points.
A lot of Steeler fans hoping that is the case, and they beat the Baltimore Ravens. Marcus, appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, fellas.
He is Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. We're going to take a break. Matt and I will be back with more right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And, we just talked with Marcus Mosher from the 33rd team, and I almost felt like he's been listening to the show because these are things we've been talking about.
Yeah. He reiterated a lot of things we talked about in the first segment.
Yeah, and even have been talking about all week. Again, everything you hear from
national and
Network,
and
even
ESPN,
if you're listening to that other station in town, the Steelers have no chance to win this game. And I don't think it's crazy.
I don't either. And I am shocked by the line and the public perception. And I also understand, you and I have done this a long time. This is a what have you done for me lately business, especially through the fans' eyes. It's over. Or, boy, the Ravens are untouchable. It's hard to win 5 games in a row. It's hard to win playoff games. It's hard to beat, a rival that knows you extremely well. I'm sure the Ravens look at some things that they like in this game for sure, but I don't think they were doing cartwheels when the bracket came out either.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
This was not one that you, again, you had the choice here if you're John Harbaugh. Okay, we're going to win the division.
Yeah, it's what we're trying to do here, right?
What we're trying to do. But then our opponent's going to be my brother or Mike Tomlin?
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Can't we get the Broncos?
Yeah, we get somebody that doesn't know me so well, that knows me as well as I know myself. And certainly Tomlin does, and that works both ways. But Tomlin's had the edge and that advantage over the years,
Yeah, and
that's
so
just a fact.
Yeah. The Steelers have a little news here. They've released wide receiver Scotty Miller from the active roster. And I know some people might look at that and go, oh, that means Roman Wilson's coming up.
Sure.
And I'm sure that's the automatic response to that. Mason McCormick is questionable for this game.
He's a broken hand.
He's a broken hand.
Yeah.
You might need another offensive lineman.
Just one more active on game day. Is that your thought? Just because even if McCormick starts the game, what if he hits it wrong on a helmet or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, I can't go anymore.
Catches it on somebody's jersey. That's what happens all the time with that. So I don't have any ligaments in my right thumb. I tore the ligaments in my thumb my senior year in high school and didn't tell anybody during basketball season.
Because you want to miss a season.
I didn't want to have to miss any games. I'd already missed some games with a knee issue. But I toughed it out. I didn't even tape it.
Okay. Just did not let anybody know.
Just didn't let anybody know. And
but you have to bump it every
all
5
the
seconds.
Time. Yeah. You catch it on somebody's jersey. You catch it. It's like it's just constantly like
Yeah.
And it's just like somebody, and even
and he'll protect it.
Yeah.
But he's also blocking 300-pound
right.
Matabuke.
All it takes is one, somebody bending that thing backwards a little bit and putting pressure on the hand, and you feel it. I mean, you're just going to.
He's not going to do a club or anything like that, from what I understand.
Said he's not going to do any kind of,
You hardly ever see people do the old club thing anymore.
Yeah.
You got to be able to grab and use your hands independently. I mean, it's just not a hammer.
No.
But no, I give him all the credit in the world. But that's not going to be an easy, 60 minutes.
No. I mean, you can do things to mitigate that a little bit, but at the same time, it's a broken bone in your hand, and it also affects your grip strength and things of that nature.
Absolutely. I mean, people think it's illegal to hold, but you grab cloth.
You grab inside. You're not allowed to grab outside.
Right.
You can grab inside.
Yep, and you'd still grab outside too.
As long as they don't call it.
Important, right? Like
Yeah.
Zach Frazier has great grip strength. That stuff's important. What was I going to say about that? So if he can't go, or if he's pulled from the game, Spencer Anderson would be his backup, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've seen that. That's set pretty well. But then you're really lean, so I assume what you're guessing is Miller makes way for the other Anderson just to be active on game day.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
They've.
That doesn't mean Miller's days as a Steeler are gone. I mean, he could end up back on the.
But he's now
right.
he can now sign with anybody. There's a lot of teams right now filling out rosters, and your end of the season roster and that kind of stuff. So, but that to me is where that go. The need right now is on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I always find that interesting. It's like this business is brutal. Miller didn't do anything wrong, and anything asked of him, hold for an extra point, sure. Be a gunner, sure. But in this instance, he's the 53rd guy, and another position is needed, and they're not going to cut McCormick.
Right.
You're not going to cut Spencer Anderson, so somebody needs to go. And unfortunately, that's the way it works. I mean, some of these guys bounce around the league a lot because of that.
You mentioned the holding stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The last game, the Baltimore Ravens had just 2 penalties in that game in Baltimore. Season low.
Yeah.
As you mentioned before, they were the second highest, most penalized team in the league this season, and they had 2 penalties in that game.
Yeah, I don't know if they have it fixed, by the way.
No,
that's
I don't
one
know
thing.
If they do either.
Huge things, like the first time the Steelers and Ravens met, man, back end of the defense is a disaster. Blown coverages left and right. Obviously some people were playing out of position or not in their best spot back then. And penalties, man, they let people back into games. Marcus mentioned this is a sloppy team, and I don't think that part got fixed.
They had 12 penalties for 80 yards in the first meeting.
Okay.
12 for 80.
I even remember when they came out of their bye, they had kind of a pseudo next bye. They played the Giants when they were horrendous at that point, and they had a bunch of penalties in that game too. I mean, so it's pretty recently. I don't think they've cleaned that part of their game up. It's
just kind of interesting that some because that was one of the things that I looked at going into that game. Like, okay, because they were the most penalized team going into that game, and again, it's held up that they ended up second most. Somehow they made it through that game. The Steelers were penalized 5 times for 29 yards. The Ravens had 2 for 10.
Yeah.
They didn't hold the entire game.
They
didn't have any penalties down the field for illegal contact, which has been another big one for them. And
that's their big,
DPI.
their 2 weakest areas, And some precept stuff they usually have
Yeah.
issues with, right?
Didn't do any of that stuff in that game.
Maybe that'll come around a little bit, right? Or even out.
Yeah. So, but again, if you look at that game, it was 17-17 in the third quarter. With the third quarter was almost done, and it was 17-17. And people were acting like that game was just a complete blowout. Oh, the Ravens 34-17. They just ran them off the field. That was not the case.
No, it wasn't. And there were some game-changing moments. Yeah, Marcus brought it up too. I mean, ball hit the ground quite a few times, and you just weren't able to pick it up. I mean, we did that video with Rob today, and one of you two, I thought it was him, mentioned how many times the ball came out during this losing streak and how many times the Steelers have landed on it. It's just, a ridiculously low percentage. That even if you don't get 50%, like usually does even out, if you get 30%, 20%, things may have gone a little different.
Yeah, the Ravens had 3 fumbles in that game.
Yeah,
and the Steelers recovered none of them.
Yeah,
like that's just
4
bad
fumbles
fumble.
Yeah, they were 0 for 4 in that game and fumble.
It just
that's one of the things about this game. I mean, there is a lot of variables about it like that.
And honestly, outside of the pass that he threw that was intercepted, I thought Russell Wilson played pretty well in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't think the defense greatly confused them, or all their simulated pressures were, too much to deal with, that he couldn't handle it. I think he'll be okay against this defense.
He was 22 of 33 for 217 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception.
Okay.
If he throws for 217 and 2 touchdowns in this game, I'll take that.
Yeah, I think I would take that.
Cut the interception out.
Yeah. I think I'd take that today. Yeah, I think that's safe to say. I think that there'll be a fair amount of short passing. I think the backs will catch a fair amount of balls. got away from that. That was working well leading into the Bengals game.
Jaylen Warren had 5 catches for 44 yards in that game.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he had a nice streak going of yards from scrimmage, 55, 65, 70, week after week after week.
He just got nicked up in the last game.
I know.
And they didn't have the ball long enough in the first half for anybody to put up any kind of stats.
Yeah.
But B, then in the third quarter, he got nicked up on a run. And
myself included, when I was watching on TV, I think a lot of people listening didn't know that either.
Yeah,
there was a play
the
that
announcers
Patterson
just
came out and like, why is he in there instead of Warren, or why are we getting more Warren? That was never explained.
It was because Warren was nicked up. I mean, I think he took a helmet to the hip,
hip part,
and kind of limped off, and you didn't see him the rest of the game. That was maybe on the opening possession of the second half.
Yeah.
So
I would think he's a much bigger part of this game.
Yeah, he's explosive.
He's played really, really well,
and gives you a little juice there. But if you
I also think Freiermuth's turned a corner.
Yeah,
yeah.
And people forget as well in that game, Warren had 12 carries for 48 yards. Harris had 9 for 42. The Steelers ran the ball effectively against the Ravens in that game.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a misconception. You brought this up earlier in the week that this is a defense you just can't run on.
Not anymore.
76.
Kyle Hamilton's 15 yards off the line of scrimmage. Kyle Hamilton's very good against the run.
Very good against the run.
That was one of the concessions that the Ravens had to make.
Which is a smart move for them, but
they're easier to run against now than they were. If they were like 3.3 yards per carry early in the season.
There. And also, some of those numbers were misleading, too, because they were so bad against the pass.
Yeah.
They're only allowing 70 yards per game rushing. Well, why would you run whenever
you
they're blowing
bombs
coverages
away,
left and right and nobody knows who to cover, right?
Yeah.
So the run defense is good, and there's no question
it's good.
about that.
Yeah.
Pierce, Matabuke, Roquan.
But it doesn't mean you don't try.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the Steelers didn't shy away from it from what I remember in either meeting.
I mean, you had 21 carries out of your two primary backs for 90 yards.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's over 4 yards a carry. Take that.
If Marcus is right, and this is a 7-6 game at the half, well, they're going to keep going with it.
Yeah.
They're going to keep sticking with it, and I like that approach.
Yeah.
Short throws, shots over the top here and there.
Let's get to a break. That's going to do it for hour number 1 of the drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I'll be back with hour number 2 right after this. And we are back. Welcome back. This is hour number 2 of the drive here on the Steelers Audio Network, and a little time for some fantasy football focus here. And we're going to take a look at the practice reports for this week.
Yeah,
I
guess
a better idea
of stuff, right?
Who's in, who's out, because there's some high profile players that
aren't guaranteed.
Aren't
Love
guaranteed,
and Hurts
yeah.
and those guys. I put together. We mentioned how there's postseason ones. The one that I got invited to, you can only use a player once. So I put together my lineup for week 1, but you got to save some of the big dogs, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
I urge people to give it a shot.
So the Philadelphia Eagles released Ian Book, who served as their third quarterback last week.
Okay.
But they then signed him back to their practice squad today. That kind of indicates that they feel like Jalen Hurts should be cleared to play.
Yeah, it's sure trending that way.
Yeah.
And it probably means we like you, Ian, but we don't need you this week.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of reading the tea leaves there on that one.
From what I understand, McGee would be over Pickett if they were to start him.
Pickett's still dealing with that rib issue.
He's not 100%.
He's not 100%.
But I think you're going to get Hurts.
Yeah.
But will we push and put his head in harm's way?
I'd be worried about that.
I'd be curious. It's been a little while now. You're right.
Malik Willis.
Would that boost your Saquon rankings in the fantasy world?
He's already.
He's number 1.
Yeah.
There's nowhere to go but up. Right.
Yeah. Malik Willis and Jordan Love both got a full practice in Thursday for the Green Bay Packers. So it looks like they'll have both of their top 2 quarterbacks available. With Love, that's an elbow issue.
I'd be shocked if he doesn't play.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. We'll see. But, how effective is he? Again, it's an elbow issue. They said it was a funny bone type thing, but you take a helmet to the ulnar.
Throwing
to that UCL.
Elbow, right.
It can go numb on you a little bit.
A lot of the things that quarterbacks will say in an injury like that is, it bothers me, but what I can't really do is control the football.
Right. I can't grip it the way I want to.
Yeah, it doesn't come out of my hand. I can't feel it come out of my hands the same way.
That's what Peyton Manning dealt with his last couple years in the league.
It started with his neck and went all the way down.
Yeah.
that a lot of these guys, like when I throw an out, I really want to feel the control of it, and I can't. I'm just kind of
sometimes the ball flutter a little bit on you.
Just kind of hoping that I get it right.
Yeah,
it's, the quarterbacks do a lot of stuff like that.
If it's a new injury like that,
you haven't done as much.
You haven't done it as much, and your brain might still think that you can.
That's the thing. Is like you almost have to trick your brain, or like brain, trust me, how we
can't
used
throw
to do
that
it because it doesn't feel right. That's how they describe it.
Yeah.
And I wonder, if you're Jordan Love preparing for this game, are you ripping out route after out route to get used to it? Maybe not. Maybe you're just babying it.
Yeah.
I don't know. And they don't have Christian Watson either.
A.J. Brown held out of practice today for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's dealing with a knee issue, but he's expected to play.
Okay. But this is a Thursday for a Sunday game. Yeah, right.
I mean, it is a concern to see him on there. As I mentioned, Hurts practiced again today. So yesterday was his first day of practice back.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the second day.
Must have went well.
But he still has to clear concussion protocol. Mm-hmm. You still have to go to the independent neurologist and be cleared.
Okay.
That's where you just don't know with concussions.
Don't know. Right. But at least we've gone through concussion protocol a lot over the years. At least he's taking the steps.
Yeah.
I mean, if he wouldn't have been out there today, it'd have been alarm bells going on.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. Marshawn Lattimore with that hamstring issue. He practiced today, so that's
okay. And he gets Mike Evans. How fun is that, right?
And he's actually had a lot of success against Evans over the years.
More so than you would think. Like Lattimore's had a really good career. Evans has had a Hall of Fame career. But Lattimore might have won that battle over the years. If you give an edge to the two, he seems to get in his head.
Gets in his head a little bit, and I think a lot of times, maybe, for whatever reason, Evans ends up wanting to fight him more than play.
That's what I was going to say, too. Like, Evans is a class act. I mean, you don't see him throwing hands or taking cheap shots at people throughout a really long, good career, unless he's lined up against that guy.
Yeah. And then it just seems he turns into the Hulk.
Gets in his mind, yeah.
We got news out of the Chargers practices. This from yesterday, since they haven't completed their practices yet. Rashawn Slater was back getting a full practice yesterday. That's huge for them because they were playing alt on the left side, and he wasn't as rough
on the rookie.
He wasn't as good over there.
No, and Slater really is a top 3 left tackle. He's been really, really good, and I'm not super impressed with Houston, but their edge guys are about as good as you get with Hunter and Anderson. That's a really good pairing. They have good corners. They got good edge guys. I'm sure they'll address up the middle of the defense, but the defense in general is pretty good. But that kind of plays against the Chargers' strengths too. But if Slater's not out there, that'd be a problem.
Yeah, Quentin Johnston with a thigh issue and an illness missed practice yesterday for them.
Okay. He's kind of important all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I mean, after a really garbage rookie year, to be honest with you, he's been productive,
Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins both limited yesterday for the Chargers while dealing with ankle issues.
Do you think Zeke gets involved?
I didn't sign him for no reson.
Yeah, right. It's not just for posterity because him and
who would win a race right now, Zeke or Gus Edwards? Or
rough.
Me.
Right, or the 4 of us in here, right. Yeah, I don't know. It's not great.
Yeah. Looking at some other stuff here, I think we mentioned it yesterday on the area. The 49ers have said they're going to release Javon Hargrave.
I don't know if we did talk about it. You and I have talked about it.
We talked about it off the air.
Yeah.
It's going to be a June 1st designation, so they're going to spread his contract out over the next 2 years.
But there's going to be a lot of those coming down the pipe here soon.
John Lynch said he wants to. They're open to re-signing him. If I'm Javon,
well, they also have a new defense coordinator.
I'm not interested in coming back on less money than I signed with you for, because now the way that goes is
he got injured.
He got hurt.
No, yeah.
But he has to then go back into that locker room on a lesser deal.
Right, and everybody knows, of course.
And everybody knows, and he's been a good player for them.
He's been a good player, period.
Over the course of his career.
Right. He's had some good contracts. Right.
I would 100% be interested in bringing back Javon Hargrave if I'm the Steelers.
I would be very, very interested. I mean, to me, it would kill almost a couple problems. And I know it's not off-season roster building time, but they don't want Casey Hampton on the nose anymore. And while Hargrave looks like that, he's got the huge butt and he's thick and he's, but he's an off-the-ball, upfield guy. And he can hold the point fine. He's still playing really well. I don't know if this injury, last I saw him, he was playing really well. It's always, your doctors have to get involved. But I don't know if Ogunjobi's going to be back 100% because he's a pretty good cap hit. He's had injuries over his career. But if you had Hargrave at the nose, move Benton to Ogunjobi's spot, you might be better in two spots.
Yeah.
And I think at this stage of Hargrave's career, he wouldn't be the Eagles contract or certainly or the Niners contract.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not super young. He came in the league a little
31.
bit older too. Yeah.
He's 31. And
signed him a 2-year deal.
If the Steelers had known what was going to go down with Stephon Tuitt, they probably find a way to re-sign Javon Hargrave.
I've said this a million times on the air that he was probably the one recently that I felt but I also think they agreed, that really breaks my heart to see him go. Homegrown talent that you got a lot out of. It was a good marriage between player, scheme, system, all the above. Just couldn't afford him.
You were already paying. I mean, Hayward and Tuitt were both making $10+ million a year. You couldn't have.
Ben had a big contract at that point.
You couldn't have
right.
$40 million tied up in your defensive line.
Yeah, that one hurt to see him walk out the door. A lot of them you see coming a mile away. That one was like, man, I wish you could figure out some way to finagle it to not let him go.
Yeah, and then as it worked out, Tuitt's gone after a year, right. And now Javon Hargrave's a star for the Eagles, and then it's like,
yeah. But schematically and price, I think that would make a lot of sense.
A lot of sense.
At least call them up.
Fresh
when
news.
When can you do that?
Well, you're not going to do it now.
Well, I know.
Obviously, they
haven't like Zeke Elliott.
They haven't released him yet. That would happen sometime prior to the start of free agency. They would do that.
That's what I wasn't sure about.
The other
you have to wait till free agency opens or before?
No, if he's released before that, you just
even
do
with
it.
June 1st.
Yeah, because they would have to do that. The 49ers have announced that they're going to do it.
Yeah, but they can't do it yet.
They can do it once everything's set here, and they'll do it when they have to comply with the salary cap.
Yeah, which is well before free agency opens.
Well, you have to be compliant by the time free agency opens on that new league year date.
Yeah.
But
if they're going to extend Purdy in the meantime,
it would happen sometime before that they would release probably about a week before.
Yeah.
Because you don't do it until you have to.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to do it now.
Yeah.
But hypothetically, the Steelers could sign him before free agency opens.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the beauty of that is it doesn't hurt your comp picks.
And it doesn't hurt your comp picks. There's a lot to like about it. Right?
Yeah. So that would make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Fresh news here that J.K. Dobbins officially listed as questionable for the wild card round game.
It's a big deal. Like you said, Edwards and I don't know if Zeke's ready or not, but those guys are pedestrian runners.
Yeah, these are the Saturday games. Josh Palmer ruled out. That hurts them.
Yeah, it does. They don't have a ton of firepower. They are been putting up more points, and they're playing well right now. But it's kind of a thin line in terms of their weaponry.
Yeah, Quentin Johnston officially questionable, I should say.
Especially if he's not 100%.
Yeah, so I don't see anything yet on Gus Edwards, but, man, you don't want to have to go into a playoff game with Gus Edwards as your lead back.
Absolutely not.
And you're missing Palmer. Potentially Johnston is.
Yeah.
That's not good.
I mean, Disley's been okay. Smart's been okay. But they're not feature players.
Yeah. McConkey is, but if they can focus all their energies, they being the Texans, can focus all their energy, hey, we're going to take this guy away from him.
I mean, Stingley will be on him a lot. I don't know if he'll fall in the slot. Probably not, where McConkey does a lot of work. But that doesn't mean you can't have a lot of bracket coverage out of the slot with Stingley locking down someone else on the outside.
I would go to Stingley and say, hey,
just follow him around.
Can you do that? Can you? Because
I'm sure he'll say
you
yes.
Go into the no matter if you're an outside corner or not. There are times when somebody you move into the hash and somebody's outside of you. You're effectively in the slot.
Yeah.
You can do it with guys, and if he's their best guy, I want my best guy on him.
I 100% agree.
Particularly because McConkey's not one of these smaller slot type guys.
Oh no,
like he's a 6'1" guy who just happens to play out of the slot.
I really think Stingley's a top 3 corner right now. I mean, he's playing better than ever, and certainly could handle it. One of the reasons they don't do a lot of that though is then you're going to get Joe Mixon running, or not Joe Mixon. You're going to get Dobbins or whatever running at your slot corner.
Right.
Okay, so what? I mean, it's a playoff game, right?
Yeah, what you put your best guys on their best guys and say, let's have at it.
I wonder if that's going to be a low-scoring game.
I would almost bet that it is.
Yeah, I mean, Texans aren't blocking anyone.
I mean, the Chargers defensively don't give up a ton of points.
No, they don't.
And they don't I know they scored more than 30 the last 3 games, but who did they play?
But they're not a high-flying offense, and
no.
they're not built that way yet. Yeah, that's for sure. Step one, and Houston does not block or protect anybody.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a problem.
That could be in the teens.
Yeah, it could be.
So, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It may make somebody like a Disley or a Stone Smart more interesting for fantasy purposes.
Right. I mean, they got
to throw the ball to somebody.
They get 13 targets between the two of them. It's possible, right?
Possible.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
short-controlled stuff.
If you're going to try to take McConkey away, and they can't really. I don't know what their running game
is out
like.
is really worrisome.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been good.
Yeah. So keep an eye on
He's
that.
been one of the success stories of the year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about him as a possible comeback player of the year. And I understand he missed some time.
Right. But he came back for a lot too.
Who's come back for more than that guy?
Yeah, I think he signed like for $1 million. Just give me a job. I'll do anything. I'll wash dishes. I'll do
I think he had 900 yards this year.
Yeah,
despite
and
missing
really
time.
Good.
Yeah,
revitalized his career.
Yeah, so
I think he's a free agent after the year.
He is. Yeah, it's on a 1-year deal.
Right.
Kind of a prove it, and
he'll be in the mix with somebody.
He
next year.
but he didn't. He did get hurt again.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, I almost said, well, he'll be a starter for someone next year. I'm like, nah, maybe not. Maybe it'll be him in a 4th-round pick, or something like that.
Or him and a Jaylen Warren,
somebody
who's a high-end number. I'm not saying here, but I'm saying a high-end number 2 guy.
Him and Rico Dowdell, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
would make a ton of sense.
Yeah, because he's still effective. I just don't know that I can give him
trust him.
Trust him. Right. Good point.
Yeah. Anyways, that's going to do it for the Fantasy Football Focus here today. Matt and I are going to take a break. We'll be back with more right after this. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And this is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network. And, of course, you can hear The Drive every Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 right here on these very airwaves. You can also download the Steelers mobile app, get the show on there, and you can watch or listen on YouTube as well. Leave us your comments. A lot of people on the comments section don't give the Steelers much of a chance this week, Matt.
Yeah, it seems to be a national perception, a local perception.
No chance.
Shouldn't
even play the game.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about even like Houston Chargers, and I think Houston's in a really bad spot. But as we were talking through it, I'm like, they got a chance.
They could win the game.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think Denver has a chance in Buffalo. I mean, like, these are all good football teams. This is playoff football. It's hard to win in the playoffs, right?
It absolutely is. We're going to change up gears here a little bit, and because the regular season is now over.
Yeah. How about this, though? I'm psyched. I mean, we got college football tonight, college football tomorrow. I mean, the streak continues starting tonight up until Monday night.
I'm going to enjoy tomorrow night in Baltimore.
All elimination games.
Watching, watching Ohio State, Texas tomorrow from Baltimore.
I'm recording a night show with.
Great way to spend an evening.
Yep. I'm recording a night show tonight with Mike and Merrill, and then go home and dig into Penn State game too.
Yeah.
Watch some prospects.
Absolutely. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, a lot of their good defensive prospects are out.
Are they?
Yeah, they're banged up defensively.
I thought so, yeah.
They got some dudes.
They got a corner I like a lot.
Corner, a couple of defensive linemen that are not high-round picks, but would be interesting.
Certainly.
The Mills kid, to me, I'm watching him, I'm like, and again, we've talked about this is a great defensive tackle draft.
Yeah, it is.
There's some dudes that you can get in those later rounds, like a guy like that, to be like, I could see him being a Steeler.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're thinking more nosy-ish type guys.
Nose or an end.
Yeah.
I'm talking like 4th, 5th round, 6th round guys.
Mm-hmm.
He'll make somebody's team.
Yeah. No, it's a rich crop.
It's a good crop. Speaking of rookies, looking here at the 33rd team, we just had.
Yeah, how about that? We're pumping them up today.
Marcus Mosher on earlier today, and Tyler Brooks for them has put together the all-rookie team for the NFL this year. Actually, a pretty good class.
I said the offense in particular is kind of historic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really good group. Defense isn't terrible either.
So looking at the quarterback, he chose Jaden Daniels.
I think you have to.
You could make a case, though, for Nix.
You could. And I just saw this, and I don't think of them in the same light. But if you just look at Nix or Daniels and Williams' throwing stats, they're really not that different. Like everyone's talking about one of them's this transcendent new player and the other one's a total bust already. I'm like, he's up a little bit.
Yeah,
but Daniels is clearly the better player and better prospect right now.
I mean, his team went 12-5, too.
Exactly.
That doesn't hurt.
And way outkicked their coverage.
Yeah.
Second pick of the draft last year.
Absolutely. His second team guy was Nix.
Agreed.
So.
Agreed.
But, I mean, if you think about it, like Drake May wasn't bad.
Oh, I think May's got as bright a future as all of those guys.
Yeah. Really, wasn't a bad year for the rookie quarterbacks.
I mean, Penix is still an incomplete, but he looks okay. And McCarthy's still sitting out there. He's
Yeah.
going to be a starter for somebody next year.
Yeah, this class this year not nearly as
Doesn't look it.
deep or star-studded.
No. Like, I'm not sure that there'll be a late-round guy, but Spencer Rattler played a little.
Yeah.
But there's 6 starters probably.
Rattler actually showed some
It's getting better.
improvement.
Getting better, yeah.
At running back, you pick 2. You had Bucky Irving and Tyrone Tracy.
I would put him in that order. Is that what he did too? Yeah. And they're both impressive. I mean, they're not the biggest guys in the world. Irving's really hard to tackle.
Yeah.
And Tracy's a
Converted wide receiver.
wide receiver. They both, I think, have bright futures.
Yeah. On his second team, he had Ray Davis with the Bills and Braylon Allen with the Jets.
No, okay. I thought
it kind of shows you that rookie running back class was not as good this year. Mm-hmm. Well, this year's class is really deep.
Blowed away. Yeah,
really deep.
It's interesting. Like, one of the conversations we had with Marcus on Locked On Dynasty was he was asking me, who are some of your targets next year? Who you want to trade for in Dynasty this year? And I said, no running backs, because there's too many of them coming. They're all going to lose shares almost. Like, how many running backs' job is as safe this year as it will be opening day next year? Not many.
Not many. It's going to be interesting.
And I can see the Steelers going in that well.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. I mentioned this to you guys today. I was listening to a podcast with Mel Kiper. He's like, I have 35 draftable grades on running backs.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll get undrafted free agents that might make teams.
It's going to be a good class. At wide receiver, the guys were
This is a great class.
Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors.
I think that's
the first team guys.
But the other guys are great.
The second team guys were Lad McConkey and Marvin Harrison.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Harrison's disappointing? He should be 4th on that list, but I'm not sure that means he's disappointing.
He had an okay year.
Yeah.
It was. I mean,
there was a little bit too much hype around him.
If he had been in New York, if you flip flopped where he went and where Neighbors went, would their numbers be similar?
The targets might be.
It's all for wide receivers. It's all about the targets.
Yeah,
that's why I liked Lad McConkey a lot going into the draft last year.
No.
But when he landed with the Chargers, I'm like, he's going to be great this year because they don't have anybody else to throw to.
He's pro ready and right. I mean, if they sign Higgins or something, his usage might go down.
Right.
Thomas is the one that really blew me away. I liked him a lot, but I didn't think his situation was wonderful. I didn't think he could just transcend no matter whose quarterback is. They got a dude.
Yeah. This year's wide receiver class, from my initial looks at it, doesn't have the stars.
It's not as good as this.
And I don't know that it's quite as deep as we've seen in some recent years. I think there's still players that have caught my eye in some of those beyond first-round guys, but I don't know that there's 20 that are going to,
I get the feeling this position will always be rich.
Yeah.
Every year that you can get a receiver on day 2, day 3, but I definitely don't think it's as strong as this class.
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be a really good class.
At tight end, Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
It was pretty easy.
It's the best rookie year ever.
Second teamer, A.J. Barner with the Seahawks.
Pretty big drop-off. I can't think of anybody else that's – any other rookie tight ends that really excite you? I can't think of anyone who might – who was the second one drafted? I can't even remember who that is off the top of my head. This looks like a really good class.
Yeah, this one's going to be pretty good.
Familiar with the Penn State kid tonight, too. He'll probably go in the first round.
Yeah.
Michigan's got a guy.
Yeah, it's a really good class there. The offensive.
Do you think Bowers is the best tight end in the league? I think it's Kittle.
In the league? No, I don't.
I don't yet either. But he's
again. It's all about the targets.
That's the thing.
It's all about the targets.
I mean, the numbers are better than the player.
Yeah. Offensive tackle. You're looking at Joe Alt and Roger Rosengarten, who the Steelers will see this week.
I don't want to say.
I don't know that I would have gone Rosengarten there.
The thing is, I don't know who else would be. It was such a strong class. There were a lot of injuries. There were a lot of guys swapping sides. Latham didn't really quite live up to it. I think the future.
Fuaga was.
Yeah, I say he's decent too.
Yeah.
I think this will go down as a good tackle class. It's just not. Chapter 1 didn't go as planned.
The interesting thing is his second team guys are DJ Glaze with the Raiders and Amarius Mims with the Bengals.
Both of them didn't play a ton of snaps either.
Yeah.
They weren't opening day starters. Took bad play from the Raiders and an injury, and then Mims got hurt again. There's still a lot of upside with those guys. Though.
Yeah.
Again, let's talk tackles in a year or two from this class.
Right, yeah. The guards. Dominic Pooney from the 49ers.
McCormick on there?
Mason McCormick.
Okay. I think that's worthy. I think that should be there.
Your second team was Jackson Powers Johnson and Isaiah Adams with the Cardinals.
He picked the right two.
Yeah.
And I bet he took a Steelers center, too.
I'll bet that could be the case here. But the interior offensive line, I don't know, is great this year.
This upcoming year.
Yeah.
I understand it's a bad center class.
Yeah. I don't know if the offensive line this year as a whole is great.
Even the top guys seem to have warts. Like Banks is a little bit short.
They're looking at a lot of the tackles. Well, he might have to kick in the guard.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
There seems like a lot of those in general. A lot of tackles to guard.
Yeah,
where there's not the alt. It's like that's a tackle.
Yeah, so the Steelers may have made the right move long term, taking 3 offensive linemen this year.
I agree. I think that's
where the value
true.
is at.
Yeah,
and again, Mason McCormick is your 4th round pick, and
I don't think you'd want to go into this draft wanting a center either.
No,
they don't.
They don't need one. Yeah. The starting or the top center, Zach Frazier.
Should be. Barton was really good too, though.
He's not even his second team guy,
isn't he?
The second team guy, Tanner Bordellini with the Colts.
Wasn't an opening day starter.
Was not.
He did play well, but I'm surprised it's not Barton.
I am too.
Yeah.
And Bordellini was a guy that we looked at early in the draft process because, of course, the Steelers were in the market.
Oh yeah, we dug into centers.
Again, hard to go wrong with those Wisconsin offensive linemen.
He's a pretty athletic guy too. He had a good combine, and like everyone, we like those top 3 centers, including Powers Johnson, the best. But then it was like, well, if you get shut out on those guys, take Bordellini in the 4th.
Take Mason McCormick.
McCormick was my next favorite, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Edge rushers. Jared Verse, Chop Robinson.
Robinson came on really strong.
Yeah.
He's much more than a finesse player. I thought he was kind of an Adokwe type, and he's not. He's a good player.
The second team, Leatu Letu and Jonah Ellis with the Broncos.
Okay. Ellis is buried, but he's been good. I thought Letu would be a little better. I thought he was a little more pro-ready. Not that he's disappointing, but I thought he would be a little further along.
The defensive tackles, Devondre Sweat with the Titans and Braden Fisk with the Rams.
Very different. I mean, they
very
couldn't look
different.
Any different. I didn't see Sweat coming. I was very critical of the Titans using a very early 2nd-round pick on him. He's been really good.
Yeah. And Fisk has been really good.
Yeah,
Steelers had some interest in him as well. A lot of people say, well, he's got shorter arms.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to matter.
He can rush a passer.
He's got a high motor.
He does.
He had 8.5 sacks this year.
Yeah.
8.5.
Yeah.
That's what. If you've got a motor and you're smart,
he's good get off and right.
You're going to get sacks. Kyle Van Noy is a perfect example of that. Like Kyle Van Noy doesn't do anything that wows you.
His highlight reel of sacks isn't like TJ's.
No,
right?
But he is relentless. He just keeps coming and
do your job.
Yeah. The second team was Byron Murphy and Jerzon Newton, who also were highly drafted guys.
Yeah, I could see the second team guys having better careers than the first team guys. I mean, there's a lot of talent there too.
Yeah, all 4 of them were good this year.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. And that bodes well. This is a great defensive tackle.
It is.
Yeah.
Love to get one.
The off-ball linebackers, Edgerrin Cooper.
He was better than I thought too, especially as the season wore on. Made a lot of plays.
And Peyton Wilson.
I don't know who else would be in the mix besides Cooper. Cooper kind of runs away with best of the group. Okay. I mean, it's odd that he's the number 3 / rotational guy, but he had a good season.
Yeah. The second team group was Tyrese Knight with the Seahawks and Omar Speets with the Rams.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And not a great class coming in. We knew that.
Yeah. But the Steelers do have a keeper there in Peyton Wilson, who kind of the same thing with Braden Fisk. Oh, his arms are too short. Doesn't seem to bother him.
Yeah.
He makes plays.
He does.
He's also 6'4". He's not 5'10" with short arms. He's 6'4" with shorter arms.
I have an odd build for a linebacker in general.
Yeah. If you're 6'4" and you have short arms for being 6'4", you still have pretty long arms.
Right.
At cornerback, Nate Wiggins and Quinion Mitchell.
Wiggins is doing his best work of late, too. So I agree with that. Not a bad corner class. They didn't go super high. I assume they'll call DeJean a corner. Does he call him? Is he a second team corner?
He did not.
Or
The second team cornerbacks are Kamari Lassiter and Tareeb Steele with the Chargers.
Okay. Lassiter is. It's funny. There's a couple dudes, Kyle Hamilton, Lassiter, that didn't run great at the combine and have gone on to be immediate contributors. I think the scouting world's changing. Like, we don't ask you to get in a stance and run 40s. Like, we have all this
fast with your pads
stuff.
on.
Right.
And,
Now we actually have data there.
Yeah, the next gen stuff changes some of that.
I think it's changing it fast.
Yeah. And they do actually, one of the things that they do at the Senior Bowl is they do time guys during practice.
Yeah. You get some time.
Yeah.
How fast.
It's one of the things I do
right?
track when I'm down there as well, since they make it's available. And so I'll look at, here was the fastest guy of the week at different positions and things of that nature.
I mean, it's real speed. It's not track. I mean, I'm not a track expert, but they'll all tell you the most important things are start.
Right.
Well, you don't get to do that in the NFL. And your pads on. I mean, it's kind of goofy.
How do you run when you have to flip your hips and do it that way?
Those first couple steps coming out of the blocks is super important in the track world. Yeah,
absolutely. But not a bad cornerback draft this year.
No. Did they do slots or something? I said DeJean didn't get mentioned.
Slot defender, yes.
No, okay.
And that would be Cooper DeJean, the first team guy. Andrew Phillips from the Giants.
He had a nice career too.
Yeah.
Or a nice season too. Giants actually didn't have a bad rookie class.
No, nor did the Steelers apparently.
No, and they have a couple of them.
And your first round pick still hasn't gotten on the field.
Or Lee or Wilson.
Or your 3.
Yeah. And
so
there's people down at the facility today were pretty happy about Lee.
Yeah. At safety, Malik Mustafa from the 49ers and Cameron Kinchin from the Rams.
Good, not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second team guys were Kalen Bullock with the Texans and Tyler Nubin with the Giants.
Yeah, another Giant that came in and played early. They were all second to fourth round picks and were fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any stars in that group.
And you can find guys like that.
Yeah.
In those, second to fourth rounds that can come in and be your slot or come in and be a safety or slot safety or whatever it may be.
And I might be interested in this class for the Steelers, a slot safety.
Yeah.
I think that would be something of appeal.
Yeah.
Bigger than Beanie.
Yeah, I think Beanie Bishop has shown enough that, as he continues to mature and get more playing time, all right, he can be my down the field guy.
Mm-hmm. I think he'll be on the team next year.
Yeah, but right. I need my
bigger,
my run stopping
slot, right?
My run stopping slot that's going to be out there, maybe more.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'll be something to address.
So that's something to keep an eye on. That's one thing, when I'm looking at some of the safeties in the draft class, how much slot did they play in college?
Mm-hmm.
Some
and
played
it's
a lot.
More and more.
Yeah,
right. It's not uncommon anymore. It's not like you're a strong or a free. A lot of these guys are also very slot capable, and I can just see always be in the market for that guy.
Yeah,
Brian Branch is a perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
I mean that's the home run.
Yeah,
but they don't go in round 1.
Right.
You can get that guy in the third round who's one of the best in the draft at it, or Sanistril.
Yeah,
he's had a really good season. I'm actually shocked he's not on here.
I am too.
Now I think about it,
he's pretty good.
He's better than most of the corners.
Yeah,
I'd love to have him in the mix.
Oh,
it's a perfect fit.
We've done a good job of identifying the slot.
The guys we liked, DeJean, Sanistril. Like if you go back and check out our mock drafts in March, April, a lot of those dudes hit that we end up picking for the Steelers. A lot of those dudes hit, and a lot of them became Steelers.
Yeah, a lot of them became Steelers. A lot of them are playing very well in the NFL.
There were a lot of guys we liked a lot. Thomas, the receiver in Jacksonville, was a guy sometimes we grab in the first round. DeJean, a lot. Yeah, these guys have been good.
Yeah, so might know a little bit about what we're talking about.
Now I'm psyched to dig in the draft. I'm starting tonight, kind of.
I am too, and I'll watch the games tonight with that in mind, but we still got a game to talk about here. The Steelers are not done. And we have plenty to talk about in terms of what's going on with this football team. We'll do that when we return. He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley, and this is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And, this is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network. And, Matt, for the Steelers to win this game, they have to win the turnover battle.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, winning in the margins, but especially the turnover battle, first and foremost. Definitely don't lose it.
Yeah, you can't lose it. And I mean, ideally, you need to win it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you need to win it convincingly. It doesn't need to be 5-1 or 5-0 or anything like that. But it can't be 1-1. It can't be, 1 and they have 2. It could be. But it's where those turnovers happen, too.
Yeah. I just think the current state of the Steeler offense isn't going to be like, we had a couple turnovers, but we came back and threw for 400 yards and ripped you up. It's just not where they're at right now. And I do think the defense, though, on the other hand, is highly capable of creating them.
Yeah.
And maybe even scoring on defense or special teams or blocking a kick, or something like that too. That would go a long way.
Yeah, I look at some of the things that have happened here over the last month for the Steelers, and that's the thing to me that stands out the most. If you look at that 10-3 start, they were plus 15 in turnover margin.
Crazy, right?
Over the last 4 games, it's been plus 1. Now, the offense in 2 of those games, one against the Ravens and the other one against the Chiefs, turned the ball over twice in each of those games. If you look at it, they only had 4 games all season where they turned the ball over twice.
So not only now some of it's the opponent, but some of it's just bad luck. Some of it's fumble luck that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
Some of it's just untimely turnovers. And you're not going to get away with it against Philly and Kansas City and Baltimore and these teams. Or in the playoffs for that matter. You're just not. The Chiefs aren't going to get away with it. The Bills aren't going to get away with it. You start having untimely turnovers or careless, unforced errors, you get bounced pretty quick in the playoffs.
Absolutely. If you look at it, the Steelers had 11 turnovers as a team in their losses.
Okay.
In the 7 losses. In the 10 wins this season, they turned the ball over 7 times.
That adds up. It's so much better than it used to be. When we did this in 2023, 2022, well, they threw a pick. Probably not going to win. So you've advanced it that way, but it's still like the most crucial stat in football, and to the Steelers as much as any team out there.
Yeah. There's also a narrative out there that Russell Wilson isn't playing well right now. And while he isn't playing as well as he was earlier in the season, I understand that.
Sure.
Do we forget that he didn't have George Pickens for 3 of those games?
I know. It's such.
Do we just throw that out the window and Russell Wilson has to elevate everybody? When all season long, all I've heard from Steeler fans is, boy, their receivers beyond George Pickens aren't very good.
Yeah. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, it's not very good. The Steelers tried to address that over and over again.
Yep. And he's definitely at the top of the list of players you could least afford to lose. Or players that can not have a good game as he did in Week 18.
Right.
And no one's happy with how he played in Week 18.
Including him.
Fluky, of course.
Yeah.
But he needs to show up and be one of the best players in this game. There's just no question about that. Even if the stat line doesn't reflect it. If he's drawing DPIs downfield, if he's drawing consistent double coverage, if he scares the heck out of them and is highly engaged in making plays, you'll be in it. He's a real difference maker.
And here's the thing about Pickens. And I mentioned this earlier in the week. He's taken it as an affront, to a personal slap in the face that he hasn't made the Pro Bowl or been, hasn't been considered in that realm yet.
Yeah.
And 3 of the other AFC North wide receivers. Now, Chase is one thing.
He's
making it
the best of business right now, right?
But I guarantee you, if you gave George Pickens truth serum, and you said, well, Zay Flowers and Jerry Jeudy made it in the division, I guarantee you, well, I'm a better player than those guys.
And I think he's right.
Yeah.
Especially Jeudy. Jeudy to me is a distant third. Pickens is, Greg Cosell says this all the time. He's a top 3 or 4 talent at the position in the league. And he's progressed pretty well. And considering how raw of a route runner he was, consistency and volatility are still issues, obviously. But who knows? If he doesn't get hurt, maybe he's a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
I like his chances over Jeudy.
He would have been over 1,000 yards.
Yeah. And a couple more touchdowns or whatever, right.
But he gets an opportunity in this game after the Pro Bowl team were announced last week.
Every eye in America on him.
Every eye in America on you. Their guy who was named to the Pro Bowl, he ain't playing in this game.
He ain't playing in this one, right.
I'm going to go out and show I should have made it over him. I guarantee you that's going through Jordan. I'm going to go out there and dominate this game.
I sure hope so, because he can. He could dominate
and not that
game.
He doesn't go into every game doing that.
Of course, but we're all human. You have a little something extra, in something like this. And he played his worst game the last we saw him. Yeah. I don't think that's the player he is.
No, nor do I. I expect him to bounce back in a big way.
I do too. And do you think they'll get him involved early and often?
They did try to get him involved early in the last game against the Bengals, and they threw him the quick out. He lost yardage on it. They ended up having to punt. And they didn't have the ball much the rest of the half.
I would like to see more, but there wasn't a ton of opportunities either.
Yeah.
There's only so many snaps to go around. I can sit here and complain that, boy, I'd like them to have gotten Pickens the ball more in the first half. After that, I'd like Warren to got more attempts. There's only so many snaps.
They only ran like 20 plays in the whole first half.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
And they ran the ball a lot, which I don't think they'll run the ball as high as percentage in this game.
I don't think so either. I would attack a little bit more in this game, and I would take those shots early. I want to try to get a lead in this game. And I know, from talking to Arthur Smith, their game plan against the Ravens the second time around, if you remember, they had that pass play that they threw to Skoranek that kind of kickstarted the offense with their second drive. That was supposed to be the first play of the game.
Oh, really?
For them offense. That was now they could go off. That was the script.
Right. Yeah.
Was that play that they hey, this is going to work. Nobody's going to expect Skoranek here. We're going to throw the ball to Skoranek, and it turned out to work.
Yeah.
They couldn't do it from their own 3.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Again, scripts are great, but they get altered very quickly too.
Yeah.
I mean, this is our approach to the game, and maybe a script sometime isn't. I'm going to run this play here, and then I'm going to run this one, then I'm going to run this one, no matter what.
That's the pushback I got on that when I mentioned it before. Well, you could still run that play from the 3. Well, yeah, you can. But what happens when you get the holding penalty or somebody doesn't?
It could drastically go wrong.
Yeah,
right. You have to alter things when you're backing.
Yeah, first of all, you got to get out of your own end zone. Mm-hmm. Your quarterback's standing in his end zone taking a snap.
Yeah,
that's not good.
No,
every team in the league basically runs the ball in that situation to get some room. And then
I know you don't want to, your goal to be a punt, but you don't want your punter with his heels on the back of the end zone either. I mean, a lot of bad stuff happens.
A lot of bad things can happen in that situation early in a football game.
Yeah.
You can't win a football game necessarily early in the game, but you can lose it.
You can lose it, right.
And that would be one way to do that, because now you just gave them 2 points, or they recover a fumble in the end zone or something like that.
Or a hold in the end zone.
Or hold in the end zone. Right. Now you're doing a free kick. They're going to get the ball at the 35, 40-yard line again, and you're right back on defense.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think anybody would fight us that Steelers need to start quick.
Absolutely.
I mean, the slow starts are hard to overcome, and that really worries me in this environment against this team. Now, I'm not saying they have to walk down and score the first time they get the ball. That'd be nice. I mean, get 3.
One of the things that you need to do
first downs,
in a playoff game in another team's stadium, one of the big things that you have to do is they're going to come out fired up.
Oh, yeah, the place is going to be rocking, right?
The fans are going to be fired up. It's a night game. They're going to have been in the parking lots all day long. Right. They're going to be fired up.
It's the Steelers. They hate the Steelers.
They hate the Steelers.
Right.
There's going to be an emotional wave early in that football game
that you're going to have to deal with.
You're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to ride that wave and ride it out. And you do that, as I said yesterday, I think you do that by putting your defense on the field and getting a stop.
That would be huge.
Or getting a strip sack or getting a turnover.
2 or 3 first downs on offense isn't just going to quiet that place down.
No, that doesn't quiet anything down.
No, it's going to be a long, prolonged battle.
Yeah, and once that wave is over, things start to settle back in a little bit. You're going to get – it wouldn't surprise me to see the Ravens come out playing as well as they've played in recent weeks.
Sure.
And then that emotional high kind of wears off a little bit, and you're in your home crowd, and everybody's cheering you on. You're the gladiator. You've walked out, and everybody's cheering for you. There's that emotional wave that you have to ride. You have to ride it out. You have to hold your own early to win it late.
You've been in that building. I haven't. I'm sure there will be a distinct home field advantage.
Yes.
I mean, there's just no question about it. In that environment, as you said, night game, Steelers, as big as the Ravens ever have one.
Yeah.
At home, right.
But in this particular game, with these 2 teams, when these 2 teams have met over the years, home field advantage hasn't really been.
No, it hasn't been
a massive advantage for either team.
No, it hasn't. I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, you've been in the building.
I think it's just a comfort level.
Okay, just I've done. I know what I'm getting into when I walk in here. Yeah, there's actually some former Ravens on the team and all that kind of stuff.
Steelers are 15-14 all time at M&T Bank Stadium, and
it wasn't like a stretch where the Browns were terrible. You just walked in there and killed.
No, they've been a good football team for a long time, and you still held your own down there.
Yeah. But no, I'm sure they'll handle that fine.
Yeah,
or at least have been there. It doesn't make it easy.
Doesn't make it easy, and what you can't do is you can't make the big mistake early, and
have a punt block,
allow
or a strip sack, or
the crowd. That's another way to take the team that home field event. Make a play on special teams. You block a punt or something.
I keep coming back to special teams.
Yeah.
I mean,
that goes a long way.
Skoranek or Pierre smashes, okay, you 3 and out, you punt. Gunner runs down and blasts their so-so punt returner and ball comes out, or block a punt or block a kick, or, boy, Tucker misses it. Ravens have a nice drive at the first time they have the ball. He misses a 38-yarder, and the whole place is like,
oh, boy.
Man. Yeah. I'm not your friend anymore. You're our best buddy a year ago,
Yeah, the Steelers have won 4 of the last 5 in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And 6 of the last 8. This takes you all the way back to 2017.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of Lamar in there. Those are good football teams that the Ravens have put out there on the field.
A whole lot of Cam Hayward in there. And there's a whole lot, right.
In fact, some would say that they've been the most talented team in the league over, since 2020.
I mean, really, since drafting Lamar, they've been as successful as anyone, not the Chiefs.
And the Steelers have won 6 of 8 in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And yet all we hear is, well, the Steelers can't possibly win this game.
Yeah, I don't think the road thing is brutal for them, And yes, the Ravens have a massive home field advantage. I just said that against anybody. But I don't think that it's back to the Harbaugh thing. It's like, my reward is I get Tomlin and the Steelers. Great. I've seen this show before.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting.
No, I can't wait.
We'll continue to break it down tomorrow. We've got one more day
to
get through this and get ready to play Steelers at Ravens, 8 o'clock Saturday night. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
I've seen every Steeler-Raven game. I've been in the building for every single one of them, and they're always worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
Always. These are the former Browns. These are the Cleveland Browns. That's what has made this rivalry what it is.
I actually think it's a better version of the old Browns.
Yeah.
I mean, no question.
Absolutely. But, Matt, that's going to do it for the show today.
Yep. Fun one.
We'd like to thank Marcus Mosher for dropping by. Check his work out on the 33rd team. You can also hear him with Matt on the Locked On Network. For my partner, Matt Williamson, for Justin Miller here on site, running the Justin Miller hotline and the soundboard here. And for Tyler Vittmeyer, making sure our video gets out there onto YouTube. Check that out there. I am Dale Lolley. We thank you for listening to this edition of The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network.
Steelers football happens here. The Pittsburgh Steelers Audio Network.